Welcome everybody to the latest in the Advanced Data Tools series of Informix Webcasts. I'm Thomas Beebe. I've been working here at Advanced Data Tools for the last 12 years. I've been involved heavily with the Informix community for the past 8. And since it was initially released back with version 11, I have been very active in using and promoting the Open Admin tool. So today we're going to be talking exclusively about the tool. This class originally, this webcast originally started out after discussions with a number of the assorted DBAs that I work with, and very few of them were actually using OAT. Some of them had tried and had problems with getting it up and running. Others had got it installed when they initially moved to a version 11 and really hadn't touched it again. And what I wanted to do is put out a webcast and put out a set of slides that will be available afterwards to help people get it up and running, and to then, at least give a little bit of an introduction as to why should you actually use it as a DBA. I know a number of the names that of the folks that are listening right now. I know a number of you have been using onstat commands for 10, 15, 20 years, and you may wonder, why would I need this, this other tool? My onstat, my onmode, onparam, they work fine for me. There may be some things you see here that you go, oh, that'll save me some time. That's what I'm hoping. So to get into it, starting out a little bit on OAT, it's OAT, the Open Admin tool. It's open source. It's PHP based. So it'll run on almost anything that can get the PHP PDO Informix driver installed on. It is free, and that's not free with conditions. That is, it is free to use. It doesn't matter your number of instances, doesn't matter your environment. It will, as long as you're running version 11 or later, you can use it free of charge. The other thing, because it is open source, you get access to the full source code of the system. If there is something you don't like, with a little bit of help with PHP, you can change it or add a module to do it. It is intended to be set up so that you can write your own plugins for it. And I know eventually they'd like to see more of a community come together writing added extensions for this. Right now, IBM is pretty much the only ones doing it that I'm aware of. It's a web-based tool that allows you to monitor and manage many aspects of your Informix instances, all through a web browser, and they also have now included the ability to do it if you have OAT set up through your mobile device. So you can actually use your Android or iPhone. I'm not sure if there's an iPhone app for it yet. There's definitely an Android app for it, and actually manage the entire or most of it through the phone, at least to monitor it, I should say. They haven't, I had a long discussion, they have not added in most of the management tools to the phone because it is too easy to accidentally, fat finger something. It is regularly being updated. They're pretty much almost every major release of Informix, they'll come out fairly soon after with some updates to the OAT tool, either improvements, adding in new features, etc. Again, it needs to be Informix version 11.1 or later. There are a number of pieces that are only for 11.7, 12, or in some cases, some of the new sysadmin commands are 11.7, XC, what have you. And when you try to run the tool, it'll actually tell you you need to be at this version if there's a problem. But it will always work as long as you're on 11 or later, because it all goes against the sysadmin database and the new systask functions. So how do I get it? There are 3 ways to get it and run it. The first way is to get the Informix virtual appliance. If you're not familiar with this, it is a free to download VMware instance that IBM provides. You can go download it, run it on anything that runs a VMware system. It has the developer edition of Informix. It also has OAT already installed, configured, ready to go. It's running on a SUSE environment, so you can just download it, plug it into a VMware server, and get up and running. It is the easiest way to do this. The second way is you can now install it as part of the engine when you install IDS, or with the CSDK. There are a few caveats to that, and this is actually what a big chunk of the presentation will talk through, and we'll come back to those. The third way is you can just go download the PHP files and the Flash files it comes with, and just throw it onto a web server running PHP with PDO Informix and be ready to go. The CSDK version is shipped with Linux, Windows, and Mac. It is unfortunately not available for HPUX or for AIX or any other environments that you may have Informix on. Standalone, you should be able to work the standalone on any operating system that you can get PHP configured correctly on. So I have had this running on Solaris. I haven't done it in a while, but you should be able to get it on most major operating systems. So if you're installing this on a standalone web server, there's a few good reasons why you may want to do it. The first one is your company, this may be the only way that you're allowed to do it. I've been to a number of sites where you are not allowed to run a web server in the corporate network unless it is approved by 15 layers of management. But getting a new application installed, that's a much easier task. So that may be one good reason. Another is you may just want to have all the control. You don't want to have to worry about something that someone else compiled and getting everything linked right. You want to do it all yourself, great. You need to be running PHP 5. You need to specifically have the PDO Informix, PDO SQLite, and SOAP modules installed. Also, it's recommended to have the GD and zip PHP module installed. And all you have to do, once you have your PHP and Apache web server up and running, or it could run against IIS or anything else that PHP plays nicely with, all you have to do is take the installer or the zip file or the tar file you get from the OpenAdmin website, toss it on the server, and you're ready to go. One note on this, and I'm hoping they will get this updated shortly. As of last week when I was putting these slides together, on the Community Edition website, the version they have is 3.1.1. However, when you get the CSDK, the version is 3.1.2, which has a few bug fixes and JSON support for IDS 12. I'm not sure if that matters to anyone on this call, but I just wanted to make a note of that. So if you're doing the standalone version, one thing that will trip you up, and I did want to make a note of this, is you have to have Informix set on the web server user. There's a few different ways to do this. The easiest way is just to add Informix to the startup scripts of your web server. Depending on the type, everyone has a little bit different way of how you set a environment variable, but it needs to have Informix because it needs to know where to go reach the CSDK information. One note also is the binaries in the Informix. You must match if it's 32 or 64-bit of the web server that you're running, not of your Informix server. So if you're running 32-bit Informix, but you have a 64-bit Apache, you need to run it against a 64-bit CSDK. Just a fair warning, otherwise you'll get a bunch of errors. The OAT README file has a really good description, step-by-step, of how to set this up. Most versions even have a couple of example files in there of configurations. So now the Linux CLI install. If you have not run the CSDK installer before on Linux, and you're doing it command line, which most people I talk to that are running Linux do, or if you haven't run it in a while, there'll be some new options. When you're actually going through and you get to choose your product features screen, you used to just be the Informix client SDK, what languages you want. You see it here on the list, which is 1 through 10. That's the actual CSDK. Then 11 through 17, that's the global language support. And then 18 through 23, this happens to be new. This is the Informix OpenAdmin tool. If you're running the Windows installer, and we'll demo it shortly, it'll be similar options. It's just, it's graphical click boxes. Or if you're running the Linux graphical installer, same thing. The options are always the same. What you do need is, if you want to install the OAT package, you need to make sure that 18 through 23 are selected, or at least 18 and any of the plugins you want. really, this day and age, disk space is so cheap, an extra 5 megs from a plugin is not a huge issue just to have it handy. Some people may want to install this separate from the CSDK, so you can actually deselect this client SDK options and just install the Open Admin tool. Do note you need to have global language support enabled on the system, so if you have not installed a client SDK or engine on the system, please make sure to set that, otherwise you will get errors. Again, disk space is cheap. The whole package is only a few hundred meg. So most people I know just install the whole thing into its own directory. Just going through these screens, I'm just highlighting them so you know they're there. If you choose the Open Admin tool, you'll have these prompts. The first one is your host name. Do note that this is the host name that'll be reflected when web pages are produced. It'll say, this is the web host it's connected to, so the HTTP, whatever host name you put here. So you can actually put the IP address, or you can put something that's mapped internally, whatever is appropriate. Generally leaving it default just means it'll point to the host name. The next thing is the Apache port number. Default OAT runs on 8080. If you don't have another web server, some people point this just to 80, which is the standard HTTP protocol. Really doesn't matter, just make sure you write it down. I highly recommend, if you're installing it for corporate use, screen capture all of these just so it's in the notes, or take the log file afterwards. The next one is a fairly important one, OAT password protection. What this does is, I would leave it at yes. What it does is it will set a web-based password to access any of the administration screens. It's a bit of extra protection. It means that people can't go in and add, edit, or delete your connection information or your settings files. If you select yes under it, you'll just have be prompted to choose a username and password. So just again, this is just the install screen, the summary. I'm sure you've all seen this before. Just down at the bottom, you'll notice that there's the Open Admin tool section. It's pretty straightforward. Note that it only takes 365 megs. This is the latest version. So it's not that big just to install the full package. This is the GLS and the Open Admin full packages. So to actually start OAT from the command line, all you have to do is go to your OAT directory. It's under CSDK dir /OAT. You can move it to a separate directory. It's not linked to anything if you want it somewhere else. And then just run start Apache. Sounds easy enough. It's not, unfortunately. The big problem it has is modern Linuxes are using newer versions of libraries than IBM compiles it against. When IBM compiles OAT, through whatever system they're using, they compile it against a series of fairly old, hesitant to quite use the term ancient, but older versions of libraries, and statically link against the specific versions rather than the global term. So, for example, one of the libraries it needs is libpcre.so.0. Most Linuxes do not ship with this. Some still offer in the repository, some do not. However, most will ship with libpcre version 1, actually 1.2.1 in the version of Linux I'm working with here. You can do is you can take that, do a symlink or an install and actually point OAT to it. This is where and I'm going to go through a number of examples and show you on different versions of Linux exactly the problem. Most people I have talked to that have problems getting this running on Linux, this is the issue that they have. They're trying to run it on a modern version of Linux, and it's throwing back all kinds of errors from libraries it cannot find. It'll either say no such file or directory or invalid version. There's a series of errors that come up from it. I'm going to actually pull up here to show you exactly what this looks like. This is a OpenSUSE 13.1 latest version. I have the latest version of the client SDK, the 410 FC2 installed. And what I'm going to do is go over to the Informix directory that I installed it in. And you will see there is a directory called OAT. Under OAT, this is where you have your start Apache and stop Apache scripts. And if I try to run start Apache, you're going to get a series of errors where cannot error loading shared library. I'm not sure if some of you have maybe seen this before. I know a number of my clients have. What this means is that the binary files that IBM shipped with this, because they ship a copy of Apache and a copy of PHP, are not linked correctly, or not linked to the correct files. So what we have to do is get our operating system to run with the correct versions. I know a number of you are Red Hat users. I'm touching OpenSUSE, which also includes SUSE Enterprise first. I have a couple of different slides for Red Hat. The procedure is the same. If you ever want to see what libraries are missing or not linked correctly, the command is LDD, and the Apache directory, under that, the bin directory, and there is the HTTPD file, which is the actual binary Apache web server file. And there is a number of here at the top, the second line down, libpcre.so.0 not found, libexpat.so.0 not found, and down here at the bottom again, the expat.so.0. We do have expat and PCRE already installed on the system, but they are a later version. OpenSUSE does include a repository version of the old libraries. On SUSE, to install from the command line, the command is zipper. If you're using a number of the other Linuxes, the install may be yum, or it could be apt-get. In case of SUSE, it's zipper, install, and then the library you want. And all you have to do is run that. Again, this is SUSE specific, but Red Hat has its own with yum. It'll go install everything we need. And if we rerun the LDD, we'll now see the expat requirement is met. The other way we can do this, and I'm actually going to do the same for libpcre, because that's, that's right. PCRE, on the other hand, we don't have an older version in the repository. However, we do have libpcre. What we can do, because we have a newer version, we have a libpcre.so.1.2.1. So again, with IBM, they linked it against SO.0, a much older version. We're running on a modern system, SO.1, or 1 and then the specific version. However, most of these libraries are backwards compatible. So what we can do to get around this is to create a symlink. Again, I'm hoping most of the Unix admins out there are familiar with these terms. We'll be into Windows in a moment. So what we're going to do is create a symlink from the 1.2.1 version to libpcre.so.0. Again, we're running for one very specific application, which is Apache, and we're running specifically for one web application for Apache, which is OAT in this case. If you're going to do this on a production server, make sure that nothing else is going to be using it or linked against it. Make sure that this is the only place where something is going to be connecting to libpcre.so.0. As far as everything, I know everything is backwards compatible. I would not trust a production application to that fact without some more rigorous testing. For purposes of getting OAT up and running, it works quite well. So we now have a libpcre.so.0 in our lib64 directory. Again, if you're running on 32-bit, it's just going to be user/lib. And again, we can run our LDD against Apache. And now you see all of our requirements are met. So going back to the slides for a minute, what we just did is we created the symlink on libpcre on pcre.so.1 and we pointed it back to libpcre.so.0. Again, it's the symbols on the newer version. They're still backwards compatible, and it's just because IBM compiles against an old version. I don't know what operating system and version they do compile against. I really hope that they do update that soon. So I include all of this in the slides. So if you don't, I don't expect to be taking copious notes on the exact commands I'm running. It's all here in the slides, so you'll be able to download it after the fact. So this is what we saw. If you look at the screen, we had to link the PCRE and the expat. Actually, in our case, we installed the old version of expat, but either one will work. So then the next step we're going to have here is we've solved the Apache problem. Apache now plays nicely. The next step, though, is now we're going to run into PHP problems because PHP has its own set of shared libraries that are also sim-linked against strong versions. The big problem that PHP is compiled against is SSL. In this case, you'll actually see where it's looking for libssl.so.6. What we're actually going to have is libssl.so. And it's either going to be 1.0 something, or if you're running a couple of years out of date, it may even be .0.98 or .9 something. The reason for that is they're linking against the old version of SSL that was actually went through its own incremental, but pretty much the entire industry has moved to the OpenSSL library set, which started out and was in the under 1 version until just a couple of years ago. They finally went to version 1. So we're not actually going down, we're actually going to a newer version on this, but it's a little weird when I tell people this when we're going from libssl.so.6 down to libssl.so.1 something. So what we're actually going to have is we're going to be linking libssl.so.1.0 something. I have seen this version be anywhere from 0.9.8 anywhere to 1.0.2, I think is the latest I've seen. They're all backwards compatible. They all play nicely. It's because PHP was compiled with SSL enabled, so that part of the module needs to link back to these libraries. You won't be able to find a libssl.so.6 in your repository most likely. So I'm going to go back in, fix this really quickly. So what we're going to do is start Apache. And you actually see here now we get a different error, the syntax error, line 126. It's because we can't load the modSSL.so, and it's because of libssl.so.6. I wasn't lying, this is all real. And so we're going to do the symlink again. In this case, they are in, just in this is a SUSE thing, they put the SSL libraries in lib64 rather than using 64. And in this case, we're just going to link from 1 to 1 to 6. And then we're going to do the same thing with linking from, we're going to run start Apache, we'll see the error again. I apologize, I realized I just had a typo. It's .1.0.0. Some distributions actually include a .1, other ones do only the full name. Then we start Apache again, and now we're going to see an error with libcrypto. Libssl and libcrypto are shipped together. You'll have the same version numbers. So now we have libcrypto linked, we have libssl linked, and now when we go to start Apache, We're going to see libpng. This is the last one that I've seen on SUSE. This is an older version of libpng. Most systems come with version 14. At least SUSE is backward, includes a copy of 12 in the libraries or in the repository. It's 12.0 for whatever reason. Again, I have all the notes in the slides. And Apache comes back clean. It is now started. Depending on your, this is a stupid little thing. I have missed this. I've had clients miss this. Right now, you may not be able to reach it because it's running on port 8080 unless you've enabled or disabled the firewall or allowed it through on the system. You are not going to be able to reach the server. So just make sure you disable the firewall, and I realized I need to do that as well. If you're not familiar with YAST, it's the little SUSE control center. It's a really easy way to manage your firewall. I'm just going to turn it off. Okay, I already had it turned off. Just make sure you have this done in your live system. I don't recommend turning off the firewall. I like to keep it on any kind of system using as production. Just enable port 8080 through TCP or whatever port you chose, just to make sure you can reach it. So we now have OAT up and running on Linux. So again, what we did is we fixed SSL, which fixed PHP, we fixed the Apache library links, and now it's up and running. Again, I just mentioned libpng. Just be aware that that's one other requirement. Red Hat 6, I went through Red Hat Enterprise 6 to verify. The only ones I had to link on that one were libxpat, libssl, and libcrypto. Again, you see how this one, it's with the SSL, it's 1.0.1e, and libxpat's a slightly different version. It had all of the other requirements already installed. One note also, that my coworker Mike brought up to me is if you are installing a 32-bit version of IDS, we know for a fact this happens in 12. I did not get a chance to go back and test in version 11. If you install the 32-bit version of the server with OAT installed, it will try to install the and run Apache when the installer is finishing up. If you run into the library prompt, if you have not already created the links, it will fail and you will get an error during the install. I just want to make a note of this. So if you have not made the links yet, you may want to hold off on actually doing the OAT install during the actual installation of the engine and do it later as a CSDK piece. Just do a separate CSDK for OAT. This is just the error he got. So you'll actually see there at the bottom where Apache tried to come up during the end of the install and couldn't because in that case, again, it was missing the libxpat SO0. So now Windows. Windows, you have it a little bit easier if you're running 32-bit Windows. 32-bit Windows, you install the 32-bit CSDK, it'll work great. I have not run into any problems on that. Any version I've tried it on Windows, I haven't tried for like 95, but I know it works on XP in 2000 and 2008, and Windows 7 plays very nicely. 64-bit Windows is a different matter. This is a real headache for a number of people I know because they have not started shipping, and I can verify this as to the latest version of the CSDK on the IBM website. They have not included the OAT install with the 64-bit version of the CSDK on Windows. I don't know why, but I'm hoping that they will take care of that in the future. If you try to install the 64-bit CSDK, you just will notice there are not the options for OAT. So I'm hoping that they will get that out shortly. So you need to go and install the 32-bit version of the CSDK. One note I will make here, if you are doing that and you're going to use the system for something else other than just OAT, I would make sure to install a copy of the 64-bit CSDK after the 32 to make sure you have all of your links pointing to the right version of the 64-bit 64-bit version of CSDK core applications. So I'm actually going to show you what the error looks like. I was testing this out earlier. What you'll actually get if you, let me share this really quickly. So this is a Windows 7 64-bit instance. I tried installing the 32-bit version of the CSDK, and you will see this error. You know, Install Anywhere has detected that you're installing 32-bit product on a 64-bit machine, and then it errors out. The little sentence after that is the tip-off of what you need to do, but it's not that clear. Include the following path as a prefix to the path environment variable. See Windows syswow64 and restart the installer. What they are actually saying in that statement is when you kick off the installer for the 32-bit CSDK, you need to already have the path, the environment variable set with that syswow directory as the first option in the path line. I would not do this on the global environment path because I can only imagine what that may break. The syswow64 directory, by the way, is where they hold all of the 32-bit versions of your environment or all of your Windows binaries. Don't know why they call it syswow64, but hey, it's Microsoft. They do what they want to. So how do we deal with that? Okay, on Windows, I have tested this on the latest version. It does work. On Windows 7, you need to start a command, either way. For version 7, Vista 7 or later, you need to start a command window run as administrator. On XP, or if you're still running 2000, you know, you don't have the same security levels, so you can just open up a normal command window. If you're running Windows 8 or 2012, so you have the new little touch screen like main screen, you don't have the start button anymore. If you go to the apps menu from that start menu screen and go to the Windows System section, right-click on Command Prompt and choose Run as Administrator, that's how you get it to go. This took a little bit of Googling to find out, but it does work. Then in the shell, you do set path equals. This is where you put in the C Windows syswow64, semicolon, and then %, path, and uppercase %. For those of you coming from the Unix world, the %, is the equivalent of $ variable name. You then go to the path to the CSDK installer, you run the install client SDK, and it takes a minute to start up, and it should be able to run. Don't install into the same directory as you installed your 64-bit CSDK. By default, it won't. They generally do C:\/ program files and program files x86 for the 32-bit. Just try not to install them in the same point. I'm just going to kick this off really quickly to show you. Closing out of this failed one. And to start off, this is version 7, so I have the start menu. Go to Start, All Programs, Accessories, Command Prompt, Run as Administrator. And what it does, I now have a command prompt that is running with escalated privileges. I'm going to go to my directory I extracted the CSDK into. And then I'm going to do the install client SDK. It's going to run through an install anywhere. I imagine most of you at some point have installed the CSDK on Windows. While this is running, I'm going to also mention the fact, because I have a number of clients that still run old versions of some outside programs such as Hyperion and Brio reports. This is an old product. It really hadn't been, the version they're running haven't been updated since the days of XP. they all are 32-bit applications. They all use ODBC, and because it's an ODBC system, they won't actually, those applications will not see the 64-bit CSDKs. So I have to walk all of them through this process to get the 32-bit version of the Informix CSDK installed. And just going through your, it helps if I actually follow my own command. That's what happens if you don't set it. So I'm starting out with the set the path is set to C Windows syswile 64, and then making sure to append the path at the end, the existing path. I'll tell you, because otherwise you lose the rest of your entire path line and things are not going to work normally. So if I don't have that, you saw the error it gets. If I do run it, it now telling it to actually launch the installer using the 32-bit binary directory. I imagine there's some stuff under the covers for explicitly why, but they make you jump through that hoop. One other thing I will suggest, if you are doing something where you're sending this out to clients, you can create a little batch installer for them that'll run the set command and start the installer. It makes their lives a lot easier rather than having to walk them through this process. So now it's not going to error out on that point. It's going to go through, check the runtime prerequisites. This is the usual. Sure, most of you have seen this before, probably many times. Accept the agreement. Again, it's going to put it into the program files x86 directory by default. And this is where it gets the installation pieces. If you actually go down here to your normal CSDK pieces, your GLS, the global language support, and then you get to the Open Admin tool. And so you have your Open Admin tool as the main option. That's what you do want. And then everything under here are these 5 options, the replication plugin, schema manager plugin, etc. These are plugins that IBM includes with it. They each have their own separate license agreement that go along with them. You'll have to accept, but they have it so they're available if you want to have them on the system. You'll actually be able to choose inside of the OAT tool itself which ones are enabled and which are not. So it's going to go through, make sure all the requirements are met. And this is where it prompts you for the port number, your Apache service name. This is for Windows, because what it will do is actually create a new Windows service that starts when the system starts. This is what it's called. And then your host name, this one's just left as the default, so it's whatever Windows call it. This is where you want to say OAT password protection is enabled. So you actually give it a password and a username. Make sure to write this down. I will actually show you how to reset it here in a minute, but useful just to save it. And then your usual summary screen, install, and it's going to go ahead and install it. So that's the steps to it. But again, it is not obvious, and unfortunately is not well documented. This is what you need to go through. I will tell you, OAT runs very nicely on Windows. It's very nice to install it on your laptop, and so you have a mobile OAT installation. You can just go plug in your laptop, put in your connection information to wherever you're at, and be up and running. Again, it's a free application, so there's no harm in having multiple installs. This is just some more information on the install. So the next thing that we're going to do is actually get into getting OAT up and running. So now we've got it installed on Linux, we've got it installed on Windows, whatever works best for you. And now we're going to connect to it. Make sure I actually get it up here. And so this is actually an old version, or a separate system I was using in the past. So by default, you go to your IP address and port number of 8080. And the first thing you'll say is, cannot find the config.php. Have you run the install? No, start the install. All of this will give you the license agreement. If there's anything your legal teams have questions about, point them to here. They can go through and read it, make sure everything is, okay with your environment. What the first check it will do here, and this is a big thing if you install it on your own version of Apache and PHP, or PHP and anything else, is the required PHP modules. These 4, PDO and the Informix, SQLite, and SOAP, these are required. It can't run without them. The GD and zip ones down here help with graphing and actually compressing the data so it gets back to you faster. It'll run without those, but it's recommended you have them. So it's a little sanity check to make sure your environment's ready to go. So the next one here, and this is an important screen, is the actual parameters for your configuration. You can get in here to edit it later, but you want to give this some thought. The first one is the base URL. So this is your server name, your port, and location for it. The important part here is if you leave this as an IP address and your IP changes, this will no longer work correctly. So they'll keep trying to go back to that IP address that doesn't work. It depends on your environment. If your OAT system is going to be stable, IP should be fine. If you're going to be out on the road, maybe point to localhost. So, you'll only be redirected on localhost. It's whatever is appropriate for your situation. The next one is your OAT installation. If you move it somewhere else into the system, you may not want it under the Informix directory. You may want it to have its own master directory. Great, just change it here. The connections database directory. This is an important one if you're on a shared server. If the server is doing nothing but OAT or nothing but OAT and Informix, it's probably fine to leave it as is. However, if you're running if you're running this on a server that only you and the other Informix administrators are going to have access to reach OAT on, this is probably fine. However, if this is on a public server, especially if this is on a main server in your warehouse and you just put OAT in as a new directory on your web server, you do not want this, because what you have here is your OAT configuration files inside the web directory. You can password protect them, but it's going to still be readable out there to anyone else that has access to the web server files. You may want to put the connection database directory somewhere else on the server that the web server can read, but can't be accessed from other sources and can't be accessed from the public web. The next one is your home page for OAT. Most people, I find, leave this at a welcome screen, but you can actually define if you want to start off at the summary screen, the performance screen, or something else. Your refresh interval, just how often it shows, your rows per page, kind of your normal standard stuff. The SQL toolbox security, this is an important one. If you have people accessing OAT who you don't want to actually be able to run SQL statements, make sure to enable this, because it will actually require a separate login that's verified by the database before they can actually run any straight SQL statements. Next one is just retry and timeout information. All looks good to me for what we're doing right now in a test. I like this warning up here. The first time you hit save, it will remind you about the connections database location. This is where you need to read the red text. It's just reminding you that it's under the document directory, it's public as part of the web server, so it may expose the information. Again, we're on a test environment, I don't mind. So again, it creates the database. This is just a little SQLite database in the background, nothing on the Informix instance. And then it comes to time to choose your plugins. Each one has their own license agreement. You can choose which ones you want to have. Each one will make sure you read the licensing agreement. It all depends what you want. Note here the JSON plugin. So if you're running the latest version of 12, they included JSON support. They now have a plugin to handle that, to give you some functionality there. If you're not running the latest 12, this probably won't matter to you right now, but it's there. Again, the JSON support is not available on the general community release. It's only available through the latest CSDK. It'll tell you which ones are installed. You can come back to this later on. It's not a one-time only. Now, OAT is installed. OAT is running. You're in pretty good shape. Now you have two options here from the main screen. The first one is you can just connect straight to a server. Put in your server name, your host name, your port, protocol, username, and password, and you're in. The other way, which is probably what you want to do, is setting up some OAT predefined servers that you basically store the connection information for. To get this, you go to the admin screen, and we're going to get an error when I do this. So it's going to pop up the prompt for the username and password. This should be the username and password I provided when I did the install. What we're really going to have is an internal server error. I don't know why they did this. Again, this is the latest version of the CSDK. I've seen this on a couple of different versions. It's not consistent. The reason that this happens is they do not properly create the password file. So we're going to do that now. Again, all of this is documented in the slides, so if you run into this problem, just go back and look at the slides. It'll give you the exact command. But the file we are missing is going to be in the Apache directory under htdocs. There'll be a file called it'll be under the OpenAdmin directory, under the admin directory. There's a file called htaccess. If you've ever worked with Apache, this may look familiar. What this does, for those of you that haven't worked with Apache, this tells the Apache web server, how do I deal with this directory? What rules are in place for it? And what we're going to have here is you'll actually see an auth user file that tells the path to the file, the auth type basic, and then what it's actually doing with the auth type basic means password protected and require valid user. The problem is with this install, and again, this is the little things that throw people, which is why I wanted to mention it, is if you look, that file doesn't exist. So we have to create it. So if you worked with Apache, this may be old hat, but if you have not, here's how you do it. If you go back up to the Apache main directory and go to the bin directory, there's an application in here called htpassword. The syntax is htpassword -c to create a new file, the file you're creating, and then the username. So it'll tell you adding password for user admin. The file is now here. You see it's small. So if you ever need to modify who has access to that admin directory, or you can password protect any other directory under for OAT the same way, is all you have to do is just rerun this without the -c and give it a new username. And it'll prompt you for the password for that. And so you can add more users, have different people have access to the admin or not. You can also use the same htaccess file with just a different path to the password file for the entire OAT directory. Just do it in the OpenAdmin directory, htdocs/OpenAdmin directory, and it'll password protect all of OAT for you. So if you're concerned about security at all, that's one of the easiest ways to give yourself a bit of peace of mind. I know they've done a lot to make sure OAT is secure, but I always do that anyway just to be very, very safe. So now we're going to rerun this, and it lets me in. So now we're in the admin screen. I'm not going to go all the way through this. You can play around with this if you want to. The main part I care about is manage connections, where there's two things here. There are groups and connections. A group is a group of servers. A connection is a connection to a server that is a member of a group. A server can certainly, you can have several groups with the same server and multiple groups, however you want to do it. We're going to add a group here, ADTC. The password, this can be an important piece. You can have several groups, several different passwords. So, Team A can only have access to servers 1 through 3. Team B only have, 5 through 6, and each one has their own group. You can also set if it's read-only, so that'll mean that they can't make changes to the servers. And now see we have a default group and a ADTC group. And we're going to go here to add connection, and we're going to create a new connection. Hoping I don't make a typo on this. I did not write down Mike's password, the password Mike gave me for this, so I'm going to use the other version. We already set this up. But all you do is put in the information and then save it. One note here, because a lot of people ask, the IDSD port is a new feature. Read up on it if you're interested. You can actually set up OAT to be able to add and restart and start and stop servers if you wanted to. So I've already created it over here. And what you have is when you hit get servers and put in a password if there is one, give you a list of servers. You can test your connection to make sure it's good, and then you hit login. One note also for the web browser, you do need Flash installed. So I'm just going to run through a few common screens here. We actually are coming out with a new article detailing the different sections of it. I also give information to where IBM's put out some really good articles going into the system. But I just want to hit some of the highlights as to why this may be useful, especially for people that have been around for a while. The first one is under the Health Center, the alerts. This is really helpful. It breaks down things that are in the logs for where you may have problems. In our case, we just haven't done a lot of backups. This is a test system, and it'll let you know, information on that when you can recheck it to see if it's still a problem. You can ignore it to make it go away. All these are filterable. It's a really nice, easy way to see what might be a problem with the system. The second one is dashboard. I apologize if this comes in a little small, but this is a really nice list. The group summary is every server in this group. We only have one right now in the group. And it gives you information on each of the different aspects of it. It's showing red here for space because, again, test system, we have several DB spaces that are pretty much full. IO is because, we were running some heavy benchmarks against it. And it actually shows you that chunk number 3 in plog DBS has an average IO time of, 0.02 of a second. And 1.1 second for a write time. These are things that an easy, visible way that go, oh, this might be the disk I'm having problems with. This may be the chunk I'm having an issue with. Next one is server performance. It takes a moment to refresh, but it is giving you what tables and are having the most activity. Again, this is nothing you can't get with SQL and on-stack commands, but it makes it much, much easier a lot of the time. The system's a little quiet at the moment because, again, it's a test system, so I don't think anything much is running right now. And then resource usage will actually give you a very nice graphical use of your most active DB spaces, your current locks, your current memory, all kinds of useful little bits of information. Your log commands, you can actually go view your online log, set up automatic rotation, manage your tasks that you have in your system. So you can actually go see when your auto update statistics are set up to run. You can actually change the settings and actually go into your different tasks. The Space Administrator is one of the most useful tools. The best thing for this, I've talked to a number of DBAs who, they've been in the job for 15 years, is you can go give your backup, who may only touch Informix once every 6 months, access to this. You can set up a DB space pool and make it really easy to create a new space or expand a space. You can go in there and get really good information on a particular DB space as to how the current information is, what DB spaces, what chunks are in it, what data is in it, get all kinds of information about your individual spaces very easily. Again, nothing you can't get elsewhere, but it just makes it much nicer for you. And having the nice web-based tool for getting, being able to take a vacation and not have to worry about getting paged because the DB space filled up, that can be a really nice aspect too, because your backup had forgotten how to run, on spaces commands. Can also manage your backups here. Can either do an automatic backups through the system if you're actually doing it through the task manager. It's a new feature with version 11.5, I think, but it might be 7. You can actually go look at your logs, how many are backed up, how many are not, your physical log usage, your checkpoint statistics. This is just on stat-g CKP. And actually go in and then run on mode commands, logical log additions, dropping them, moving the physical log. Again, nothing you couldn't do elsewhere, but it just makes it easier. There's a full section for replication, depending on if you have ER or HDR. It does a fairly nice way to monitor the entire replication system. The memory manager will let you break down what the server is actually using in a number of different ways. You can set up the low memory manager. There's a lot of different things. The system validation is the on-text. You can manage your virtual processes. So you can actually see how many of each kind. You can dynamically add or drop VPs. Set up your auto-update statistics. If you have IWA, there's a full tool for that in here. Configuration tool, you need to have 12.1. This is where you see an error where it'll tell you exactly what version you need to be on. Or sorry, 12.1 XC2, we're on 12.1 FC1 on this. One of the nice ones is the performance analysis, where you can actually do an SQL Explorer. If you have the SQL trace on, it'll actually break out very nicely all the different types of statements you're running, how many, the average response time, the max. And you can actually then go in and drill down into it just like you would with OnStatG SQL, but this will actually show you ones that are not currently running, so you can, as well as the ones that are. So you can actually go in and see what was running 10 minutes ago that slowed down the whole system. Session Explorer, OnStatG SES. The system reports are really nice. You can actually choose groups of them. I know I'm going very quickly on this, we're low on time, but I just wanted to show a few things here. These are all the disk statistics, for example. Will actually show you each disk, what the usage is in one very nice tree chart, your I/O levels based on chunk, logical logs used. All this in one, 2 clicks, and you have a nice, displayable report that you could then print out and go take to a meeting. You don't have to spend a bunch of time running, stuff and then dumping into CSV and then making charts in Excel. It's all done for you. You can go in there to the graph section and actually get information on the number of extents per database. There's all kinds of different aspects to dig through here. I just wanted to kind of show a few highlights and without getting too deeply into it. So, gone through, got started, created connections. So I just mentioned here a couple of security concerns. There's a PHP info file that they include by default. Really, you want to go and remove the file or comment out the PHP info clause. It gives a little too much information out there in case someone's trying to get into the system. I mentioned that you can use the HT access and HT password to password protect the entire OAT installation, so that way you can control the entire passwording process. Sometimes it makes auditors feel a little more comfortable. Never leave an OAT group without a password unless you're, because otherwise you'll basically give anyone that can reach that web server access as Informix or whatever user you connect as to that database. Never do that. Always put a password on it or just password protect the whole system or both. A few links. There's the OAT homepage, the Open Admin tool. There's this whole series of white papers and articles that IBM has put out on different aspects. They have an entire one on replication. They have a couple on different features of it. Go check it out. It'll give you a much more detailed view if there are areas you're more interested in. I wanted to link specifically to the one on mobile OAT in case that is something that is of interest. The Informix PDO tool, this is the link just if you need to go download it. Virtual appliance how-to and the downloading virtual appliance, again, that's the easy way to install it. Just download them, throw it on a VMware instance, and you're good to go. Whole our paper on running enterprise replication with OAT. if you're looking at combining the two, I highly recommend it, and just a little bit on the Apache password protection if you want to get more complex with it. And come back to questions here. I just wanted to mention we have a PHP series coming up on Webcast. First one is on March 18th. I'm going to be teaching everyone about basically getting going. The first class is going to be getting PHP up and running with the PDO Informix driver, and then some basic writing some basic PHP, and then we go into more advanced topics with it the following months. The first one especially, if you're looking at wanting to run the web server yourself or get it working with an existing web server, that should get you up and running with everything you need for OAT. So just mentioning that these are coming up, highly recommend if you're interested in picking up a little bit of PHP or just finding out more about it, tune in for it. Another thing I wanted to plug, the IEG 2014 conference. It's in April 27th to May 1st. It's in Miami. It's going to be great. If you have not been to an IEG conference before, this is specifically for Informix. You will have the Informix developers there. You have IBM's, a large number of IBM executives, the people that are actually running the show, running the direction of Informix, get to talk to them directly, as well as have the best and most technical hands-on classes for any conference out there for Informix. And it's just great networking, and I highly, highly recommend it. I also am not getting any kickbacks for this. This is just, I do feel strongly about it. Thank you for tuning in on this. I'm going to go back up here and go to questions and see who we have. Lester, I'm going to unmute you.
Can you hear me, Tom?
Yeah, you're coming in now.
Okay. Anybody who wants to ask a question, you should be right next to viewing Tom Beebe's desktop. There's a chat button, and just send a chat, which will send a text message to Tom or I with your question, and we'll be glad to give it a shot. And you can always send an email to Tom. Tom, why don't you put your contact information back up too?
Yep. Yeah, it's Tom at Advanced Data Tools, or just go to the website and contact us. Trust me, it'll get to me. I'm more than happy to answer any questions, including if you run into technical problems or had any bugs. I actually like to know what other problems people have with these tools so we can, make sure we update information out there for people.
Yeah, and since we are out of time, Tom, we might just have people email you questions instead of taking them right now. I don't see any immediate ones either.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much. Do feel free to email me or call, contact me. I'm not hard to reach with any questions you have. If anything is globally relevant, I'll try to update the slides with it. We should be able to include the slides on the website along with, once we get the webcast up in a stored format. But hopefully this has given everybody a little bit of help on getting it up and running, hopefully a little bit of reason to get up and running. I mean, honestly, from talking with people, being able to easily generate reports and being easily able to get your backup or your junior DBA access to go add DB spaces or add some extra logs, or, the normal little maintenance windows so you can actually sleep better at night. For a lot of people that have been around for a while, that is quite worthwhile. I very much like the system. I keep it with me on my laptop, so I go to a client site, I plug it in, and I have a much better, quick idea of what's going on with their system. Again, assuming they allow that sort of thing within the network. Every environment is different. But if you have any questions, feel free to contact me, and thank you all very much.
Just one last thing. The slides and recording will be up on our webcast in about 1 to 2 days. So check back end of day tomorrow. If everything goes well, I should have it up then. If not, it'll be up on the next day. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much.